Once Professor Jha joins, we can have him, join the conversation. Shubham, you can take us live.
Yeah, you are live now.
Thank you. Well, welcome to this session towards multilingual internet tools, content, enabling policies in South Asia. I will be joined. My name is Samiran Gupta, and I shall be joined by a group of very eminent panelists today. On your screen right now, you have Mr. Harsha Vijayavardhana. Harsha is a board member, Bank of Ceylon, LK Domain Registry, as well as the COO of Thikshana Research and Development. Alongside him is Subhash Dhakal. Subhash is Undersecretary of the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, Government of Nepal. And joining us soon will be Professor Girish Nath Jha from the Jawaharlal Nehru University, and who is also the chairman for the Commission for Scientific and Technical Terminology. Before we get started, let me just share how this session will be run. Broadly, it's a 50-minute session. And after the introductions, I will request the panelists to give their overview on the topic, which is tools, content, and enabling policy in South Asia, and how we can use all of that towards a multilingual internet. And once they complete their session, their speaking period, I will possibly ask a few questions, and then we will open it up for questions from the audience for about 9 minutes towards the end. And then, of course, right at the end, I will wrap up with the key takeaways. So without further ado, let me first go to Subhash. Subhash, if you'd like to turn your camera on, that would be very useful. Then those in the audience will be able to see you. And if you want to kick this off, tell us your thoughts about how we can make the internet multilingual in the South Asia region, and what needs to be done with tools, content, and policies. Subhash, you are right.
So thank you, Shamir, for introduction and brief introduction of this panel also. So in the past decades, we have been talking about multilingual internet, and mostly in the past decade in the South Asia also, and we have been working on how we can make the internet multilingual. First, we engaged on some of the IDN's issues also from the Neo-Brahmi lipi in the South Asia, and now we have already have a standards for root zone level generation rule for Devanagari script. So that's an achievement. And if we see India, we have .Bharat IDN's domain name in India. So that makes us a very good departure to the multilingual internet. But still, we have some of the issues and some of the solutions we need to implement because we are not being able to realize a true multilingual.
Subhash, we are unable to hear you, unfortunately.
For all in enabling policies, wherever able to go technical 2.0. You are now able to hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. So we need to look after these issues in the four viewpoints. The first viewpoint, viewpoint. So technical viewpoints. So what are the standards we are working on? Even the programming language supports and the browser supports we are working on, but still we found that most of the browsers are not being able to use IDNs and so multilinguals email address also. That has been even some of the research shows that only one third of the compatibilities are there in the browsers for internationalized domain names and the emails, or even the social medias are also have the same problems. So they are yet able to adopt these technical standards that has been developed. And we know we have a tools that can support to validate and to accept the a multilingual domain name and email address has been developed. So that there has been a team. I've seen news on the universal acceptance steering groups has developed that tools, but still that is to be uh, so to come to the communities, and communities to adopt that. So another, as I said, is another domain is like a platform providers. Platform providers should also be very lean on processing and validation of these internationalized domain names and email addresses, and even some of the local language content also. So certain web, if you see, so even the web-based processing platforms, development platforms, they are not being able to support these domains. Another important aspect is a content provider. I have seen is a very, so we have been working on the standards. We are talking to the platforms providers or everybody, but are our content and service provider ready to develop the content in local language, use IDNs, use multilingual email addresses or not? From my perspective, I saw them, they are not very willing and they are not very keen to take the risks on developing content and host it in the with the multilingual domain names and the. So, what I see is we need to have some policy incentives for content developers so that we can engage them. We can just ask them, okay, so whatsoever is your business model, whatsoever is there, just start with the multilingual content development and try to do that. So, we communities and the government need to have some push for that for with the content and service provider. And another viewpoints we need to see is a user perspective. So are our users really feeling comfortable to use those IDNs? Is our users feeling comfortable to use the local language contents? I think they are not feeling comfortable to use this. So regarding domain names and emails, we have a problem. So some of the web forms, we cannot fill forms with those uh, local language emails or something like that. That is one part. And another user perspective is users a viewpoint. Like we say that we support the local language, but we are not supporting the local language. I'll give you an example. In Nepal and India, what we use for the counting is like is a ones, tens, thousands, 10,000s, lakhs, 10 lakhs, crores. So if you see the most of the most means in the internet, we cannot have those uh, those forms. Like we need to use millions, billions forms in the internet. So you cannot realize that. It's not only so another example, I need to add another example from Nepal. We use Bikram Sammat as a date in Nepal, but in the internet, most of the content we cannot use that. So it's not only supporting the encoding of the languages, it's supporting how we use our language and what are the critical characteristics of our languages, that should also be supported in the internet. Even so, I gave this couple of examples that, so that makes the users have an experience of local languages. So we need to work on this as a team, as a community, jointly, so to find out these types of gaps and fulfill these type of gaps. So if we focus on this, so peoples who are not served and underserved right now will be benefited with this multilingual internet in the coming days. So who are known to these issues, we need to come together and work together to solve these issues. Thank you, Samiran, for now. So I'll
Thank you
answer
so
if
much.
you have any queries.
Thank you for your opening comments. I think you brought out some very important points. The challenges, particularly, while a fair bit of work, as you mentioned, has already taken place in developing technical standards. But I think what you've uh, showed us is the adoption of these technical standards, uh, whether by the community or by companies which run browsers, etc., are still falling behind. And then, of course, you mentioned, the user experience. Let me also welcome Professor Girishnath Jha. Professor Jha, in your absence, I've already introduced you, but I'm just welcoming you in the room now. But we will now go to Harsha Vijayvardhana, and then Professor Jha will come to you at the end. Harsha, would you like to share your thoughts, please? Harsha, you're on mute.
Good morning, everyone. So nice to be here. So some of the things that I will share with you, I think what I want to say today, this morning is, so Sinhala and Tamil content on the internet right now, we have, that's the current status. We have two CCTLDs. So these are one of the first non-ASCII IDNs, international domain names, .lanka and .ilange. So we have roughly about 50% of the total population of Sri Lanka is on the internet daily. So they use Facebook. So that's roughly about 10 million people. They mostly use the Facebook. More of a younger groups on the internet right now. So for this internet, you will see the using internet that you see the Sinhala content is on the rise. That because of the fact that we have now the input methods, for instance, we are using the voice input method mainly. So therefore, there are a lot of content right now on there, and a lot of people use the mobile, Android especially, more than the Apple. So iPhones, but they use Android. Older generation is slow to basically pick, but it's actually that also is on the rise right now. So the last two presidential elections and the general elections, internet became the main vehicle for canvassing. So that's another major thing. Gossip sites are the ones that are on the rise right now. So a lot of people are using gossip and the news sites. And they also use the WhatsApp and the mobile apps. They have become very popular, and most messages actually in local languages. Marketing companies, I actually for the last couple of years, actually the marketing companies are collecting data, which they are trying to. They are using this data for the marketing their products, and so the Google Maps, Facebook, WhatsApp are the most popular applications, and Twitter has a unique audience in Sri Lanka. What we have the issues are right now. We just kicked off the universal acceptance as the local initiative in Sri Lanka, the ICANN local initiative. Actually, we did that last week. But though that we had these two domain names, CCTLDs, very slow to adopt. The people are very slow. In fact, very few internationalized domain names. What we saw was actually last week was actually there will be a demand as we go along. And some of the issues that we have is because of the fact that some of the browsers, actually most of the browsers, except for Firefox, they do not comply with IDNA 2008. I think more than Devanagari, we have this hidden character zero-bit joiner. Because of that, some these in the second and the third level, that the zero-bit, because of that, it breaks. So it creates a fairly there is a kind of people seem to think that the Unicode does not work because of that. Especially we can't write Shri, for instance. Shri breaks. So we are now trying to address these ones. And also we just started installing the email servers in Sri Lanka. So I think by next year we will have a platforms with the in Sinhala and Tamil. OCR and text-to-speech and speech-to-text are already available, and also the machine-assisted translation tools. So these are some of the things that we have right now, we have done. For the multilingual internet, I think with these input and some of these tools, I think we should be able to the other 50% may be joining the internet very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Harsha. So very interesting, when I compare what you said versus Subhash's opening comments, and of course what we see in India, I think the 10 million people are online using and generating some degree of local content in local scripts, but there are some technical challenges that remain. Professor Jha, you hold a very interesting role in what you do currently, apart from, of course, your academic background. Tell us, from your perspective, how do you see content developing in local languages? How do you see new regulations or new policies being developed across the region? One of the points, quite frankly, we saw how the use of local language online became so important during the COVID crisis last year, people adapted different ways. But is there a better way to get more people online in local languages? Over to you, Professor Jha.
Thank you, Samiran. Can I quickly share my screen if possible?
I believe it is.
Okay. Let me go to my screen.
I think there's a share button at the bottom.
Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great. So thank you for bringing me to this very important panel discussion. I mean, India has always been, full of multiplicity, multilinguality, multicultural, multiscriptural. Yes, multi is the keyword here. And the government in India, I mean, any government has been basically struggling to keep pace with multilingual communication needs and requirements and administration, all of that. So we have a challenge as well as opportunity in our multilinguality. But the last census we had 2011, which was reported later, somehow it came with 19,569 languages. Everything is a language, right? 270 mother tongues, which is spoken by less than 10,000 population people, and 121 full-blown languages. Remember, some of these are actually language groups, which means, for example, Garhwali would be one of these 121 languages, and Garhwali itself has 12 dialects. So, out of these, only 22 have gotten place in the constitution, and they are spoken by 96.71% people in India. And if you look at this language family map, so whatever may be the reason for this familial description and division and distribution of languages in India. So this is the major is Indo-Aryan languages, which is spoken across Indian subcontinent, including Sri Lanka. Sinhalese is an Indo-Aryan language, and Tamil is the Dravidian language. The Sogalam, I don't believe in this. I still call it unsupported by linguistic data, bottom-up linguistic data, the division of languages in India by family. I see there's a lot of similarity and crossovers between the so-called language families in India, and the linguists have called it these language area, single language area in India. So these are the languages here. And if you look at the 22 Indian languages which are in our constitution, they are spoken by 96 or 97% people. 15 Indo-Aryan, these are 15 languages, 5 in our constitution. These are 4. This is 1, Santhali, these are 2, Manipuri and Bodo. And these are our scripts, Devanagari, the biggest script, and then Bangla, the next big, and then we have other scripts. And Perso-Arabic, which is used by Urdu and Kashmiri, is not Indian script because it hasn't come from Brahmi, and so is Roman. These two are actually alphabetic script, not phonetic. Others are phonetic. Means as we say, we write. But these are there's no similarity between one-to-one correspondence between writing and speech. And then shared language, if you take the example of Bangladesh, all our countries, which are our neighbors, share languages. Nepal shares a lot of languages, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, all of these share languages. So if you look at Bangladesh, a lot of languages from the nearby states in India are shared in Bangladesh, and most of them are extremely endangered. And have a list of these extremely endangered languages in Bangladesh and India, which are shared. And we need to work on these. And I basically, since I chair the Commission for Scientific and Technical Terminology in Government of India now, in the last 6 months or so, I've been focusing now on more of these languages which are not scheduled. Because if you write a dictionary for them, then certainly there is a lot of strength for them. So we need critical areas, of technology development are these, we need to preserve endangered languages, literatures, and cultures. Knowledge traditions have to be preserved. E-governance has to be provided. Education is very key right now, and health, of course. What is critically needed? These basic tools that you would imagine every language would require, and more so in India. And India, there's a challenge because people are quite flexible in using language. There's a lot of mixing happens. But besides that, look at the bottom up. We need indigenous algorithms. None of my colleagues in India actually who are working in AI are using actually their own algorithms. They just work on the borrowed algorithms, tune it and train it, retrain it, large language models. And we need to have indigenous data centers, which most of us, I don't think we are using. We are using cloud services like AWS, Google, etc. And the moment we use them, we lose our data. And then we need to have our own cost-effective, flexible, multilingual AI. India, the AI has to be completely free or cost-effective, otherwise it doesn't work. As I remember. And we need critical language resources for building technology, and these are also not good quantities. And the difficulties are because our data itself is very complex. It's crazy linguistic data, I call it. A lot of mixing happens because of the casualness in language use, and social media is, of course, very, very crazy. We have also mixed scripts and multi-scripts used, in social media everywhere. And the so-called pure and impure language uses controversy also keeps on coming. Now, the complexity of linguistic data has special requirements, for smart, robust technologies to process them. And these requirements are on pre-processing, normalization, multilinguality, multi-script capability, and mixed script also. There are examples. I don't have time to tell you how scripts are mixed and influenced in India. We need standards for data and metadata, and with a lot of trained manpower. Of course, a lot of funding and community support in India. So funding part is handled by mostly 3 ministries: Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, we call it MITI, and Education, which I represent now, and Ministry of Science and Technology. So I am actually basically representing Ministry of Education, but the other 2 ministries, I am also part of several of their committees, and industry and language groups also, come on help. Currently, I'm chairing this Commission for Scientific and Technical Terminology, and the job is to create vocabulary, scientific and technical vocabulary. Technical does not necessarily mean technological, but technical vocabulary in any discipline. Virtually, we have all Indian languages, all disciplines, to create, glossaries and dictionaries and encyclopedias. And we have currently developed more than 2 million words already. I didn't don't have time. I can show you. I have myself put them in searchable mode on my laptop, and I'm going to push them over onto our new server called Shabda. Shabda.education.gov.in will be there in about a month's time, and all these vocabularies will be there in searchable format and downloadable format. A glimpse of that I have done it on my dictionary. So something like that you will get on my Shabda glossary. So see, we have more than 300 dictionaries, and 146 I have digitized, searchable, and we have already reached 12 lakh 37,000 words. So I'm hoping 25 lakh words or so will be there. We have glossaries, we have definitional dictionaries, multilingual, bilingual, kind of dictionaries, learners dictionaries, all kinds, And this is not the end list. There'll be more, almost double the list. As we are going to have our data server, which is Shabda, and all these things will be there. And we'll be involving people in creating the dictionary in our Shabda Shala project. Current initiatives, of course, MIT has this Bhashini initiative. I'm in the executive committee over there. We are building speech-to-speech machine translation, and government of India actually. The speed is, of course, very, very slow at this point. And there's a parallel activity by Principal Scientific Advisor, PM Modi's scientific advisor. I'm in the committee too. So there's an innovation challenge for machine translation. We just interviewed about 20 startup companies. We want to fund them for this initiative. And the Ministry of Education, of course, is helping AICTE for quickly translating engineering and other technical books in Indian languages using machine translation. Among the academia, you have IITs, Chennai for speech, Delhi for OCR, IC Bangalore for online handwriting, JNU, which is my parent university. I'm on leave from JNU to this organization. So language technology resources, tools, etc. I'm not talking about what exactly I do now, so there's no time. And the CDACs and triple ITs, triple ITM, etc. Machine translation, IT Bombay, Pushpak's group does machine translation. Jadapur, IT Patna. A lot of these very eminent universities and people working together in this area. And when you combine with the manpower expertise in the neighboring countries, it becomes a huge pool actually, Because 3 years ago, I was in Sylhet University, Sylhet, Shah Jalal Institute of Speech and Technology, to give a keynote on Bangla computing. So a lot of universities across the other countries also working in this area. Among industry, Google is a leader, and I'm currently consulting Google for nuanced uses of Indian languages and machine translation for 19 languages, and there are other. Recently, they came up with Muriel, which is a 17 language large language trained model for many Indian languages. Microsoft Bing, they have 12 languages. The Urdu was done by me. I did the Urdu on Bing, and then other tools. And if you compare, Google is far ahead in machine translation than Bing. And Amazon Alexa, of course, they are coming up faster. And then there's a lot of interest in this, the startups and this SMEs, the very bright young guys in India currently. They're focusing on legal, education, and health. They think there's a lot of revenue coming out of there. So finally, if I want to say that for a multilingual internet today in Indian language, we need to build a lot of resources to handle, especially the crazy usage of language that is coming up on internet. Very very challenging but very creative, and for that we need to create a lot of quantities for language resources to train our language models. And the challenges are diversity, language variation, mixing, standards, of course, funding, and the casual approach towards our language. Teamwork and competition, etc., are hugely needed in India, and the complexity of natural languages more so in multilingual countries like India. So certainly, we'll need a lot of teamwork, funding, and standard and data development in India to make sure we really have a multilingual internet. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Professor Jha. I think you've covered a very wide scope and breadth of what the challenges are and what solutions are being deployed. But I found some of your some of your points very interesting. For example, the need for indigenous data centers, need for flexible, multilingual artificial intelligence. Uh, just my thoughts on that, or rather, a question for you: where do you see the private sector? I mean, you mentioned how the larger companies like the Googles and the Microsofts of the world are working here, but where do you see the role of smaller companies, startups, who may want to get into the space? Because at the end of the day, whether it's India, whether it's Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, or or any other neighboring country, barely 7-8% of the population actually converse in English. Uh, Maybe the number goes up and down depending which country you're looking at. And for example, I know I was looking at some research from 3 years ago, uh, that over 500 million people use Devanagari and Hindi, therefore, as first and second language. So where do you see startups contributing? Because at the end of the day, it's also business to be done over here.
Well, very good question. Just 2 days back, we interviewed about 20 startup companies under a PSA initiative. And all I can say is that they're very bright young people in India, and a lot of opportunities for them to come up in this area. So most of them I see are coming up in education and health, area, and of course e-governance is what they are coming up with. But they see there's a lot of revenue that they can get in there. And I have found, that, for example, this machine translation challenge that we wanted to give them, that most of them are still using the web services and clouds that are available to them. They're not ready to. They don't have the resources to set up their own data centers at this point. I can understand because there's funding, of course, funding crunch for them at this time. But in case of machine translation, for example, if I give them a task that, okay, we have to have English to Hindi machine translation, show me what you can do. So they will very quickly use some, solutions by Google or some other inside, and then they would like to show that this is what we have, and they will improve upon those things. And for example, for them to train completely a new language model using neural platforms requires a lot of GPU power and other things, and they don't have at this time those kinds of resources. But the good thing is that the out of 10 new people who are connecting to internet these days, 9 are actually using Indian languages, and English still happens to be the second most spoken language in India. 10% of India can speak English, so that is a big number. And third, of course, would be Bangla or Telugu, I believe, about 7%. So English is a big resource in India, and Hindi. You see, if you consider the 10 Hindi-speaking states, you will get approximately 45 to 50% people. But look at the other states like Punjab, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Bengal, Orissa. I mean, all of them virtually no problem with Hindi these days. So someone told me that approximately 80 to 81% population can now actually comfortably communicate in Hindi. So that is becoming a big resource in India. Now we can consider to replace English as a medium of instruction or higher education with Hindi, and we'll be much more successful than what English is doing today. So there's a lot of opportunity, certainly, and we have to focus on the startup companies. And Government of India is now setting up Section 8 companies, like Invest India company done by the PSA, and they are funding startup companies through them. So a lot of new initiatives actually are happening. So I see a lot of good times coming up.
Thank you, Professor Jha. Subhash, coming to you, how do you see the ecosystem developing, particularly in Nepal? You kind of spoke about the challenges there, but in practical terms, what do you see happening? Do you see the private sector participating? Do you see the users actually, uh, innovating in ways? And is there any startup activity which is supporting the use of local languages?
Yeah, Samiran. So we have if we see the history, so we have a very good history. So when before 15 years, so we have a very good start with so computing local languages techniques, and that there has been a one collaborative organization like a language technology kendra. So that's a collaborations from one of the NGO Madan Puraskar Pustakalaya and two universities, Kathmandu universities and Tribhuvan universities. So these three entities come together to develop language technologies. So they have done a good work. So while developing a keyboard layout for multiple keyboard layout for Nepali languages and some of the fonts. But later on, so it works. It started with a very good speed, but later on it slowed down, and it tried to have some like a grammar and spell checker also, but that could not be completed completely. So that, and some of the other startup I have seen which are working on like grammar and language checkers in so in some of the competitions. So we have a one ICT award competitions, and almost in every award competition we see one or two startup which comes with the language technologies here in Nepal. So that's a good point. But there's, as I said earlier, their sustainability is an issue for us. So regarding other ecosystem, as I said earlier, so private sector are not more keen on the using local languages a lot. So I don't see many of the private sector, even the websites, they are not even in local language. So using the IDNs are far away. Regarding governments are promoting that, but still, if you compare the presence of governments in the web, so they have a good presence in English rather than in local languages in Nepali. So we have other challenges, like we have other local languages also, like Ranjana Lipi is used in the Nepali languages here. That has not been in, we don't have developed any technologies for that. And most of the other languages which are common in like Gurung, Tamang languages, which are common in language, we are yet to develop technologies for those languages. So this is the scenario here. So another problem we are facing that I need to means it's good to put this because Professor Giris is here working on that. So in the Devanagari script, so many, if the government, while government is using the Devanagari script, my previous experience where I was in a national ID project as a technical director there, I found out a complexity on the rendering issue of the Devanagari script. So we have a mapping, but the rendering, so that the every people should commonly understand when there is a complex character like a sra, so or biswas, like, so when there are the complex or joint characters, so we have a rendering issues. So that is making us a very difficult to present it universally understandable form. And another the professor Jha is talking about the AI. So as a student of means computer science, I found it those complex characters are still a huge challenge for us for developing AI technologies in the local languages, because in Nepali we say ra o and kha. So when written together, it looks same. So if even if we need to have a AI in the two phases, like a character recognition and then the interpretation. So it has been a complex complexity. So it has given a huge complexity to develop ecosystems for AI for Nepali language, and I think it might be the same problem in Hindi also. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Jha, would you want to respond? Because we are running a little short of time. I'd like to open it up for questions also, but if you would
Just a
like to
minute, just a
respond in a
minute.
minute. Sure.
I just wanted to add that, yeah, I agree there are issues in the rendering, especially when you wrap the text, on the web. So issues are there. We have to have script grammar also, besides the font issues, etc. Now, I wanted to add that we are doing a lot of work for Nepali, and recently our team was in North Bengal University to do a dictionary for library sciences in Nepali. So we'll be updating you with whatever work we are doing for Nepali now, in our country. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks to all our speakers. Let us open the floor for any questions from the audience. Shubham, do we have any questions? I see a question. Mr. Santosh, did you have a question? Okay, I see a question over here. How is the uptake of email services in local languages in both Nepal and Sri Lanka? So request Subhash and Harsha to answer that.
Uh, there is a bitter situation, Samir. Now, when it comes to email, we just started the email service, the platforms, right? So, but I would like to, can I also interject on certain things that which you have discussed, for as far as the signal is concerned. One is the OCR. Now we have done our OCR. Now there are two universities in Sri Lanka which are working on both the text to speech and speech to text. University of Moratuwa and University of Colombo, which I'm actually also from that University of Colombo. The Tikshana is actually a company started by University of Colombo. So we actually work on the OCR is now we are working on that. We have done it, finished with the earlier we had the pan localization project. In addition to that, we are also University of Moratuwa is working on the machine translation. So Sinhala actually most of the work that we have done right now with these. So we are about to actually release some of them. And the other question that you asked about this private sector, we have several companies, they are basically done by the young entrepreneurs. There were some companies have been there in the market for a very long time. I think almost like 15 years, some of them, right? Though our market is small, that we have a quite a vibrant private sector as well. We worked with Nepal also with the pan localization project. I think we did quite a lot of work together. So other issue that you said about the rendering issue, I think you also have the issue what we have, which is a hidden characters. I think Devanagari has that. I think some of the issues that you're talking about is that there is a zero with non-joiner and zero with joiner. I would suggest you to actually, so there is we can actually work together in certain, because we have the biggest problem with the zero with joiner. So we are working on right now. I think very soon, I think we may have to encode some of those characters that, I mean, not the some of those like we call it Rakarans and Yansu forms. I think you also have the same problem. Anyway, so that's what I want to actually talk about, Samir. Yeah.
Thank you. We are actually running short of time, and there's a bunch of questions which appeared. Let's take another couple of minutes to try and get to these questions. But Subhash, before I let you go, are email services working in Nepal?
Okay, so to be specific to this question, so for the Nepali language now the email services are good, except Nepali email addresses. So it means they can accept in the headers like subject or anything, but the addresses in Nepali languages are not yet used in Nepal. So in the other fields and as a content and message fields, so Nepali language now works well in Nepal.
Thank you. One last question before I sum up. Is there a proposal to create corpus across Lipi-less languages? Professor Jha?
Well, in India, there are a lot of such languages which which are not written, they are not documented also. And the government hasn't done any corporate collection for those languages. Individuals may have done a lot of such resources, but I think there is a lot of need, big need to create a speech corpora for such languages. But I don't know of any project or an initiative by any governments here to actually document them and create a corpora. People
Thank
like,
you.
Professor Anvita B and other individuals have done a lot of data collection for such languages.
I think, we could be talking about the languages of our region for another couple of hours easily. So many questions are coming on the chat, as well as I've got questions, but unfortunately the time has come for me to sum up this conversation. Firstly, thank you all for joining. Subhash, Harsha, Professor Jha, thank you for sharing your insights and views on what's going on in your domains and particularly across the region. What I learned from this conversation really was that we need to use technology to help gain control over how we use our languages online, and therefore make sure that those languages sustain. Because there are so many languages in the region, many of them, as Professor Shah just kind of illustrated, just 22 of those form, the national languages in India, but there are so many more, for example, just for India, and similarly across the region. So the need for technology to support the propagation of these languages, need for funding, obviously, to support the technology and the work, and eventually we will have more languages online. We can see that happening gradually, but I think it's going to take some more time and support, and it was great to hear the desire to collaborate and cooperate across this region to make some of these goals come true. So thank you again, everyone, for joining. Thank you to those who were in the audience today. I think we have a few seconds to go, and we can close this session now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.